Hi, good evening. Welcome everybody to this webinar called Strengthening Your Nonprofit Cybersecurity Affordable Strategies to Protect Your Mission. My name is Jonathan Ratner, co-founder of Tel-Arm. We're gonna talk about nonprofits and what they need to do to be on top of their game in terms of cybersecurity in order to stay out of trouble. Let us begin. So I'm going to give a brief introduction why cybersecurity is critical for nonprofits, compliance and regulations, best practices to protect your data, affordable cybersecurity solutions, and then I'll take questions. So in introducing myself, I have a background in management. I've been involved in fintech and homeland security before I got into cyber. I have a connection to the world of philanthropy from two directions. My sister is a wonderful philanthropist. She was head of women's philanthropy in the New York UJA. And I run an Israeli nonprofit. I'm the administrative director of an Israeli nonprofit. So I know how to run a nonprofit, that you don't have big budgets for cybersecurity or almost anything, but you do need to take care of your data. So I want to share tonight important insights on how you can do it. Like you didn't think you needed a line item in your budget for cybersecurity, but just like you have locks on your doors, you need to lock your data. So I wanted to start. I'm a big picture person, and I want to talk about good versus evil. And because I'm talking to philanthropists, I'm talking to nonprofits. So you guys have a mission. You're passionate about what you do, and you're the good guys. You have a soup kitchen or whatever you're doing to save the world. Philanthropy is an expression of human goodness. So I'm talking to good people. The problem is that I depicted here some evil people, Darth Vader and his henchmen. Cybercrime is an expression of man's capacity for evil. And some people forget that people can be really evil, but we exist in a world where there is evil and they're doing terrible stuff. Cybercrime is huge, it's trillions of dollars. They're stealing money. But there's more specific to the good guys of philanthropy and nonprofits. Bad guys specifically prey on good guys and take advantage of them. So, as a nonprofit, you're a focus for cyber criminals, and they don't need guns because they can come in and take your money without using a gun. So we have to be a little bit savvy. We have to wake up and deal with this problem before it really ruins us. So we're going to talk about the specifics. Here we go. So why cybersecurity is critical for nonprofits? Why nonprofits are targeted by cyber criminals. So first of all, nonprofits hold valuable data. They have a connection to wealthy people, right? They're donors. They may have donor info. They have volunteer data. They have data of the recipients of their goods and services. They have funding sources. Maybe they have grants. So they have good stuff that the hackers want. Second, cybercriminals see nonprofits as an easy target because they know that nonprofits, they don't have the kind of budgets that a big company has. So they have limited cybersecurity resources. And like I explained, the good guys of the nonprofits, they don't realize that we're in a jungle and that there are savages who will rob you blind. So there's a naivete of the management of the nonprofit that may not have a defensive posture. So I want to teach the managers of the nonprofit to guard your face. Don't let yourself get hit in the face. Don't let them pick your pocket. So let's talk about the specific threats. Um, so the first is ransomware. They're gonna hack your files, lock them up, and ask you for tons of money in order to unlock them. One of the first things, the obvious things that you can do about this is if you back up your data. So it's whatever you have online or exposed or in your server, you have somewhere else, like on a hard drive. So there are things to do so that they could, lock your data and you could say, I don't care. I'm not paying you. I have backup of all my data on a daily basis or whatever. Another means of attack they might come at the nonprofit is through data breaches. Again, stealing data and leaking it of information about the donors or other financial information. This is something that needs a little bit of explanation. Vendor exploits. Every company, every organization, every website has vendors, has people that are part of the supply chain that are supplying them with technology, goods, and services. And you're buying that from them, and your assumption is that they're clean, they're good. And they're probably good, but they may not necessarily be clean. They could have been hacked so that you have you're sharing access to your data or to your website with third parties who themselves are weak. And so the hackers are using that as what we call a backdoor to get into your nonprofit. The fourth thing we have there is credential threat, stolen logins, which would lead to unauthorized access, and they could wreak havoc on your system. So I just want to mention another particular sort of issue with the nonprofits, besides the limited budgets and sort of the good-heartedness of the managers, but they also often have volunteers. So a volunteer, maybe hasn't been trained in cybersecurity and in best practices of how to keep safe. So that's another weakness, sort of, in the wonderful things that the nonprofit is doing, but it creates a breach that the bad guys are going to try to take advantage of. So let's see what we can do. Understanding the financial and reputational damage of a breach. So I still want to emphasize, how they could get you. So of course, the financial cost, the average cost of a data breach is actually over $4 million for a large organization. Operational disruption. You won't be able to do the good things that you want to do during a cyber attack, or possibly after the cyber attack. Third, reputational damage. You'll lose trust, right? You're a simple operation, but your donors may be rich and powerful people. And if they see that you're not trustworthy because you got hacked, then their data was exposed to you, that relationship may sour. So that could be bad for your future. There can actually be legal consequences. There are fines for noncompliance with regulations. We're going to talk a little bit about regulations momentarily. And fifth is the impact on your mission. A cyber attack can directly disrupt the nonprofit's mission and cause long-term harm. You're trying to do good things, but meanwhile, this could throw a wrench in the machine and really get you off track. So you don't want to go there. So what about compliance and regulations? So let me share with you a few common regulations that nonprofits need to abide by. So handling donor data isn't just a security issue and reputational issue, but it's also a legal issue. The GDPR is a law in Europe, and even though you may not be in Europe, I'm not in Europe, but if I have European data, okay, I have Europeans who I'm doing business with and providing services, or they're my donors, so then I'm bound to keep GDPR. The same thing is true of California, has its own law about this that we need to conform with if we have anybody from California who we interact with. There are financial regulations called PCI DSS. It has to do with credit cards and things like that. And there are, of course, medical regulations, depending on the space in which your nonprofit is functioning. You may have some medical data about people. Maybe you're helping fund some of their medical expenses. So you have to be really careful. There's what's called HIPAA compliance. And that's a very specific and an important set of rules that you need to comply with. Failing to comply with these regulations could result in major fines as well as reputational damage. So you need to know the rules that you need to keep. So one of the things you can do to sort of build up your cybersecurity posture, we call it, and to design how you're gonna do this, how you're gonna skin the cat of cybersecurity. And again, you don't have a lot of money to spend on this. You recognize its importance, but where should you go? How should you start? So luckily, there are some frameworks that can help you to give you a structured approach and a way to track the progress of improving your cybersecurity posture. So the first one is called NIST, N-I-S-T. It's a flexible approach designed to help any organization. It's a U.S. thing. It comes from the NIST, which is the National Institute, etc. So whether you're just starting or you're improving, NIST provides clear steps to protect your data and systems. The CIS controls is developed by the Center for Internet Security, and it's a set of best practices designed to help organizations identify, manage, and mitigate the most prevalent cyber threats. So it has a list of essential actions like securing your email systems and implementing what we call MFA, multi-factor authentication. They need to come in with the username and password, but then they also need to be recognized through a second means of authentication, like getting a one-time password on their phone or using a biometric, or maybe they have a little doohickey that they put in the computer. But you want to have more than one factor authentication. You want to have multi-factor authentication that greatly increases your security. There's another framework, ESO, we call it in Israel. It's very detailed international standard, and it's suitable for larger organizations, for large nonprofits. So these not only would you be compliant then, that's something you can advertise and your donors will appreciate that, but even if you're not going to, do the audit and and NIST isn't really made for that, but it's going to give you guidance of the pathway to improve what we call to harden your endpoints and to harden your security posture, you're going to be in a better position. So, what are best practices to protect your data? So first thing is the human element is still to this day, it's still the weak link in the chain. Most of the cyber attacks have an element of human weakness, exploitation of human weakness, whether it's social engineering or calling the secretary and saying, please give me your password. I'm the tech guy, whatever. So you want to train the staff. You want to train them on common threats, phishing emails. There's vishing and smishing. So they need to be aware of that and be, a little bit savvy and defensive and protective of the information. Teach them about ransomware, teach them about password attacks, strong passwords. It's number 3 here. Email security, recognizing phishing attempts and handling suspicious emails. There should be somebody in your organization that's teaching the people and that not to click on suspicious emails or to open them. And when they get them, they forward to this person who's logging them and keeping track of this process. Again, people who are outsiders to the cyber industry may not think it matters if you have a strong password, but it does. Without a password, people can't breach, they can't get into your system, and a strong password makes a big difference. If there are enough symbols, enough digits, it should be a long password. It shouldn't be easily it can be guessed easily. It shouldn't be your birthday or your social security number. It should be a combination of large and small letters, numbers, and symbols. So use long, strong passwords. An organization should have policies about this, of a minimum length of the password and complexity, and perhaps even have, a password manager that all the volunteers and employees use, again, to increase the strength of the system. And we mentioned multi-factor authentication, encourage the use of MFA on critical accounts. Okay, another aspect of improving cybersecurity in your nonprofit is to limit access to sensitive data. And again, I've been in organizations where this is really weak, where anybody could get onto the server and see the banking details of the company and how much everybody's getting paid and so on and so forth. So that shouldn't be. There should be a principle of least privilege, which means that you only grant access to the information in the systems to the users that they need to perform their jobs. So people who are not in the accounting department, they can't have access to the financial details because they don't need it. So if they don't need it, they shouldn't have it. There's role-based access control. Implement different levels of access for staff based on their roles. So it's a little bit, sophisticated of creating tiers in your system, in your network, that there's an administrator, there's people who are maybe heads of departments, and then there's the people on the floor, on the ground, and they don't need to have access to other parts of the data of the organization. It's important to conduct regular access audits by reviewing the access rights periodically. Another way that the hackers sometimes come in is through like retired accounts, like somebody used to work here and he still has a username and password, even though he hasn't been here in a year and a half, but nobody retired his account. So it's important to review the access rights periodically and make sure that they're current and that there aren't any open ports and so forth that people could take advantage of. The last thing is user authentication, requiring strong passwords and MFA for accessing the sensitive systems, which we talked about. Okay. In terms of the role and what you need to do, you need to protect the sensitive donor and the volunteer information. So one of the means of protecting information is through encryption, which there are special encryption tools, and you don't have to understand encryption in order to do this, but somebody on your team needs to use tools to encrypt the sensitive data, both in storage and during transmission. Like you can't have people emailing you their credit card details. That's not an effective way. That's a good way to get credit card details stolen. So yeah, you have to improve that. You want to have secure payment gateways, use PCI compliant payment systems for donations, data retention, implement data retention policies, which means you don't keep donor data longer than necessary. So you want to stay current and not keep data that's vulnerable to be taken or exploited longer than you need to. Donor trust. Communicate with your donors about your cybersecurity practices, and that will, build up their trust in you. They'll see that you're professionals and you're taking your role very seriously, that they are trusting you with some of their money, and you are respecting them and their data by doing the things you need to do. So that wins you some support from your stakeholders. We mentioned that there's a cybersecurity threat through what we call supply chain attacks that from your third-party vendors. And one of the things you need to do in order to avoid that type of thing is to check on your vendors. So you need to assess third-party risk, evaluate the cybersecurity practices, not of your own organization or in addition to your own organization, but the cybersecurity practices of your vendors who have access to your data. So I would say you can assume that your bank has strong cybersecurity policies, but other vendors who have any access to your system, it's legitimate and appropriate to reach out to them and say, can you send us documentation of your cybersecurity practices? This is part of GRC, of governance, risk, and compliance. And so they're used to that, of answering security questionnaires. So that's something, again, that you or someone in your organization or bring in an outsider like us that needs to conduct a risk assessment of third parties who have access to your data. You want to put this in contracts. Contractual security clauses include cybersecurity requirements. Anytime you sign a contract, a purchase order, they're going to do this, that, or anything else for you. You want to have that there's cybersecurity clauses in there guaranteeing the safety of your data. Regular vendor audits, schedule periodic security audits of third-party vendors. And like I said, supply chain threats. Watch out for cybersecurity risks in the supply chain, all the people who have access to your data along the way. So it happens, right? The things happen, and the world is, as we said, cyber threats and cybercrime are still growing. What happens if there is an incident? So how to plan for a cybersecurity incident and how to recover effectively. So this is called incident response, and to have an incident response plan. So define the roles and the steps to take when an attack is detected. There are incident detection tools. Use monitoring tools for quick threat detection. It matters. And let me just explain a little bit how the bad guys work, how the hackers work. They do recon, they do reconnaissance. Okay, they check out your system, and they may do that for weeks or months. They may then breach your system. They'll become a user on your website, and then they'll up their clearance and they'll make themselves an admin or a super admin, and they may be now in your system for weeks or months or even years. And you don't even know about it because you're not monitoring it. So that's a no-no, okay? You need to monitor what's going on in your network so that if there are, bad actors, malicious actors who are already in your system, you're going to find out about that and deal with it. I mentioned earlier, it's very important to conduct regular backups of your critical data, and that's going to help you if there is a ransomware attack and you can't get your data, but you have your data because you backed it up. So that gives you a plan B. Post-incident review. If there is a cybersecurity incident, afterwards you want to analyze it and adapt your security measures based on the lessons learned. Okay, so we recognize that you're not a giant company with a great deal of resources. You are a nonprofit, and you're existing on donations maybe or whatever you're charging for your services. You don't have a lot of spare cash, but just like again, you have locks on the doors. You have to you have to have a line item in your budget for cybersecurity. It doesn't have to be in the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. It probably has to be more than the hundreds. It's somewhere in the thousands. You do need to include this in your planning. But there are a lot of free tools. There's a lot of things you could do for free. So there's free antivirus, Windows Defender, there's something called Bitdefender, there's email protection, Google security settings, Microsoft Defender, password managers. There's a free plan in Bitwarden, Google's password manager. So you can have much stronger passwords than just the ones that you might, think the simplest ones that your team are using. Secure cloud storage, Google Drive, OneDrive with security settings enabled. And the last thing is having a WAF, which is a web app firewall. Cloudflare is a free WAF, which again is securing your website. So these are things, these are affordable cybersecurity solutions that there's really no excuse for not doing these things because they're basically free and they strengthen you. They make you a less likely target. Again, the cyber criminals, I've called them evil. They're the bad guys, and we're not going to change them. We're not going to stop them from trying to steal money, and they're going to try to steal from the easiest targets. So don't be the easiest target. Let them try to steal from somebody else. Let them come to your website and find, oh, that you have a firewall. So this isn't so easy for us to breach. Let's go to the next one. They'll try to crack your passwords. And it turns out, oh, you have a strong password manager. So your passwords are strong. They can't breach them. Okay, they'll go to somebody else. So don't make yourself the easy victim. Make yourself the tough guy. You're the good guy who's a tough guy and who's not naive about what's going on out there. So you've strengthened and hardened your system so it's not so easy to breach. There are government and nonprofit cybersecurity resources. Again, this is free stuff. CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency resources. In the UK, there's something called the National Cybersecurity Center. The FTC is the Federal Trade Commission, and they also have significant cybersecurity guidance. So these are free resources. Again, there's no excuse for not doing this except lack of attention. And you can't afford not to pay attention to this because this could hurt you. It could, endanger your mission. So you care, you're passionate about your mission, you care about your relationship both to your recipients and your donors. So you need to give importance to your data security. So in conclusion, what are actionable next steps? What can you actually do? So start with performing a cybersecurity risk assessment. What are the risks that we're facing? How could the bad guys attack us? What could we do better? Implement multi-factor authentication and password policies to everybody in your network. Train your staff on recognizing cyber threats. Explore government cybersecurity resources. Make cybersecurity a priority. Again, you might not like it. A lot of people don't like cybersecurity. It turns them off or they're uninterested. It's boring. That may be true, but this can threaten you. This can shut you down. Okay. So you got to deal with it. So don't make it an afterthought. Oy vey, what do we do now? Think about it going forward. How can I improve my security of data in order not to be a victim to this? So we're giving you, concrete ideas of next steps, and we're here to support you. So you have questions, let us know. We're a small organization. We care about people and your mission, and we can help protect you and your data. We understand you may have a low budget, but that doesn't mean you're uninteresting. You're important. And so turn to us, info@telarm.com. Check us out, and we'd like to help you continue your mission without being a victim of cybercrime. So I thank you for being with me this evening, and thank you, Sarah, for being here with me. On my team, Sarah Wolpin, our head of cyber operations. And with that, I wish you a good night.